Bruchim Abayim to another edition of our Hilchot Shabbat Biyun. Siman Shin Yutet is what we are continuing, and today we're going to be focusing on Seif Vav, which is a very important Saif in Siman Shin Yutet and in Hilchot Borer in general. Of when you have peanuts, you want to shell the brown shell. Can you do that? Or you're one of those more natural people who want to break the outer shell that comes, usually a case with 2 peanuts inside, and you want to break that open. How about, when you have almonds? And almonds also come in 2 casings that you don't necessarily see when you buy almonds in the store. Or walnuts also, they have 2 shells, a wooden hard shell and then another green shell outside. Can you break open those shells? You want to eat the fruit. Is that considered a problem? Or is that not considered a problem? Now, this seif is really a bridge between 2 melachot and Shabbat. There's the melacha of borer, and there's the melacha of dash. In other words, in process of sidura de pat, of making bread, you have process of grain, which of course, planting and plowing and planting and all that with harvest is one, but then you have dash, which really separates the husk, the shell, from the grain, and then you have a miraket and you have borer, which through which you really sift through, taking what is not needed out of the mixture. So dash is basically separation, and borer is separation. Do they really share any common ground? Is what we're going to see, and you'll be surprised to learn some of these things that nowadays we could actually be dealing with dash. Now, the difference will be that, as we mentioned before, borer has limitations. If you want to eat right away something derech achila, that's not borer necessarily. As we discussed in previous shiur, there are those who say if it grows together is not borer, right? And we're talking about the shitot of many rishonim. The Aruch holds like that. The Rashba seems to hold like that, and so on and so forth. But on the other hand, by dash you don't have those heterim. Dash is not necessarily derech achila. So what exactly would be the boundaries of that is going to be the sugya we will discuss today. So this starts with really a machloket, an apparent stira between 2 sugyas. Our sugya starts really from Masechet Betzah, Daf Yud Bet Amud Bet, and the other half of it is in Masechet Shabbat, Daf Kuf Chav Chet Amud Aleph. So I'll read to you the words of Bet Yosef, because without it the whole basis of the seif in the Shulchan will be missing. So says Bet Yosef, Maran, בפרק עמד יום טוב, says, אין מוללין מלילות בשבת אלא מולל בשינוי. This is what the Tur writes, and the Bet Yosef brings that the Gemara in Masechet Betzah Daf Yud Bet Amud Bet mentions that המולל מלילות מערב שבת למחר מנפח מיד ליד ואוכל. There's a way to be molel melilot b'Shabbat. You want to separate the husk. This is just the Bet Yosef, right? You want to separate the husk, the shell, and the way you do it is with your hand from Erev Shabbat, and says, and the Gemara there, I'm skipping, umefaresh b'Gemara de davka me'erev Shabbat. It's clear in the Gemara in Masechet Betzah that you could only do this me'erev Shabbat, aval b'Shabbat en molelin melilot. On Shabbat you cannot do that, right? So can you do any melilot b'Shabbat? The Gemara in Betzah seems to suggest that you cannot do it. The problem is in Perek Mefanin in Masechet Shabbat now, 128a, Kuf Chavchet Amud Aleph. The Braita there says clearly, and I read, Chavile Be'ayezov Ve'koranid. All of this, אין מסתפקים בהם בשבת, למאכל בהמה, מסתפקים בשבת מהם וכו', ומולל ואוכל, ובלבד שלא ימלול בכלי. You could do melila, you could separate them, but you can't do it with a kli, with a vessel. Right? So now you have a problem. In Betzah you tell me, en molelin on Shabbat. In Masechet Shabbat you tell me that you could do it, just don't do it with a vessel. Right? And that's Machloket Rabbi Yehuda and Chachamim. Chachamim there disagree and say, no, molel berashe espotav. Chachamim say you could do it even with your hand, but it's rashe espotav. You do it with the fingertips basically, and you do it. Now the Gemara has a three-way machloket over there. What exactly is mutar? The most stringent is Abaye. The least stringent, which we paskin like, is like Rava. Abaye holds that you could do with only two fingers, with your thumb and your esba, your index finger. Between the two, you could rub it, separate, and then eat. Right? And Rava holds that you could do it even with all of them. That's more easier. You don't have to go like with just two fingers. You could just do it, as long as you're not doing it like this, which would be the normal, easy way to do. You do it with the fingertips, and that's mutar. As we'll see, the Shulchan Aruch will paskin like Rava, and that really is the starting point of our Shulchan Aruch. Right? So we have the machloket in the two sugyas. We have the machloket Rabbi Yehuda and Chachamim. We of course paskin like Chachamim, and within Chachamim we paskin like Rava, which would mean berashe espotav. So without further ado, let's read what Maran says over here in Sif Vav. En molelin melilot ela molel beshinui me'at berashe espotav. You can't do a regular way of how you would do melila in a regular weekday. You can't use a kli. You cannot use even your whole hand the way you would do it. But the way you do it is, listen to the words of the Mechaber, the Shulchan Aruch, Ela molel beshinui. You do it with a change, which it means that you're doing it with your fingertips. Me'at, and you do just a little bit, not a lot at the time. The quantity would be a little bit. And that's what's clear from the Gemara. Well, once I'm saying this, the Ben Ish Chai reads this Maran differently. Ben Ish Chai learns that me'at means you are doing a little change. Beshinui me'at means you don't have to have a shinui gamur, as we'll see later on. Sometimes you have to completely change the way you do it. Here you don't have to completely change it. Normally you would do it with your hand like this. Now you could do it with your fingertips. Shinui me'at. He has a long sa'if, actually in Parashat Mishpatim, in Shana Shniya, in Otehei. Long is a whole page, the sa'if, more, a page and a half. It goes through the whole lamdut, through the whole intricacy of learning, when you need shinui gamur, when you need a complete change, when it's deoraita, and when it's the rabbanan, a little change is sufficient. Right? And he learns within the words of the Ben Ish Chai. It may not be very clear in the Ben Ish Chai, but certainly is very clear in Rav Pe'alim. Rav Pe'alim in Chelek Bet Sima, in Orach Chaim Siman Membet, is very clear that he requires the way he learns this Maran in Shin Yutet Seif Vav is that you only require Shinui Me'at, a very small change. You don't have to have a Shinui Gamur. Now, the problem with the Ben Ish Chai is, Acharei HaMechila, the Sugya in Betzah, in Daf Yud Bet, is pretty clear that Shinui Me'at means, but Shinui Me'at means you're having a little quantity. Me'at is not going back on Shinui, but it's going back on the quantity of what you are using. Right? And, later I found, Chacham Obadia also he asks the same question in the middle of a longer tshuva in Chelek Yud of Yabia Omer in Orach Chaim Siman Nun Hey. He asks this question as well in a footnote in the Ha'aram. But nevertheless, the conventional way of learning this Shulchan Aruch, because it is muchach in the Gemara like that, is that aside from the fact that you have to change the way you do it, you also have to have little quantity at a time. You're taking a little one thing, two things at a time, and not larger amounts as you would do during the course of a regular day, a weekday. Fine. So says the Shulchan Aruch. Says the Ramah now. Says the Ramah, wait a second. What happened with Isur Dash over here? Right? Isur of Dash is separation of the husk from the shibboleth, from the grain. And that's another one of the 39 melachot. Are we doing away with that? How is that different than this? I'm taking something out of its shell, out of its casing, and that, when you're talking about grain, is melechet dash. Over here, you're telling me that you can do with the nuts, you could do that. So before we even read, well, let me read it actually. Well, let's read the Ramah and then talk about the properties of Melechet Dash versus Melechet Borer. So over here it says the Ramah, even though that you are taking out the food from the shibolim, from the actual casing of them, because you are only taking this out, not its normal way, you're doing it in a backhanded way, you're doing it with a shinui, and you want to eat it, it's mutar. But, says the Ramah, not too fast. V'yesh machmirin. And there are those who say, no, it's asur. Because what you're doing basically, essentially, is melechet dash. And therefore, you should not be able to do that. And says the Ramah, listen to this, V'lachen asur lefarek ha'egozim luzim or egozim. It's asur to take walnuts or almonds, all of those items. It's asur to take them out of their green shell that they have. Mitoch klipa hayeruka. From the green. Nowadays, the kids think that pistachios, the way you eat them, grow on the tree, right? I will never forget on one Rosh Hashanah night in yeshiva, one of the Ashkenazi boys who had never apparently touched a pomegranate in his life was trying to have the pomegranate, and he thought the seeds are the pits, so he was standing by the garbage. You can't even make this up, right? I wouldn't believe it if I didn't see it. I was trying to put the seeds in the garbage and eat the peel inside. Right? Yeah, he needed some direction. How he'd never seen the actual the way it works. Now, those who are a little bit more sophisticated laugh at this. Right? The more sophisticated people, they think that the pistachios grow with the hard shell on the tree, which is also not true, right? The ones who have actually seen how it works is. They know that there is a green, soft shell, greenish, reddish, whatever it is, cover on top of that hard shell, and of course, same is with all the nuts, right? The walnuts they come in a casing, in a wooden casing, and then outside of it is a thick green shell, which if you try to take it off, it paints all of your hands. Right, for those who have actually done it, for a week or two afterwards, your hands will be brown, right? So you have to really know what you're doing when you want to take it off. Or it seems a lot of seeds is the same way. Like people don't know how sesame seeds grow, right? Yeah, but if you actually see how it is, they're all in in a shell, many of them, and as they dry, you can shake it off and they pour out the sesame seeds. And so is with a lot of nuts and seeds, that's how they are extracted.
Are we speaking of removing the outer green shell or the...
So that's what the Ramah says. The Ramah says that the green one would be asur because of that. So now, well, people don't usually have this, but pistachios is something that happens. Here in the markets, they have the pistachios that come with, when it's the season for it, they have the pistachios with the outer shell, right? And some people will have fun on Shabbat, they want to have fresh pistachios. Sounds like a problem, right? The same would be with the peanuts. The peanut will be with the outer hardish shell that you could, it's symmetric. You could, it has a line, and you could easily break it, or with your hand you could break it. That also would seem from this that would be a problem.
Even though this is the normal way of eating things, like the normal.
That's part of the question, right? It's part of the question. Now, so this seems to suggest that would be asur. Now, what exactly is the difference between the two? Why would I be able to peel off the wooden one, but not the green one? I mean, what's the difference? Is there a difference? So you tell me one of them is dash, one of them is borer, or not even borer, just the way you eat it. Is derech achila, you peel it off, you eat it, just like you will peel an apple, an orange, right? It will be mutar. And the other one is asur. Where do you draw the line? So I personally like there are different things said about this. You'll find in your pamphlets, also in Shiur 5, you'll find attempts of definition from already Rabbeinu Hananel in Masechet Shabbat of Ayin Dalet Amud Aleph, that he tries to define dash versus borer as a thing that's attached and stuck on it, grows together, being dash, and things that are less so as borer, like pebbles and stones and things that are mixed with it, as straw and so on and so forth. They would be that's borer after they have been separated. But when you separate something that's stuck to something, now there are many who disagree with that, but that's one of the major differences that are brought. Now, my personal favorite is the Marshag, Reb Shimon Greenfield, which is one of my favorite achronim, like all-time favorite achronim. And the Menuchad Avar, Rabbi Moshe Levi Alav Shalom, also he brings that same thing, that the difference is when you have something that culturally, I'm saying culturally, I'm using it carefully, but something that is done on the field or in the company versus something that's done at home. That's the difference. If something is done on the field, it's the process, is part of the process of the dash, which means you separate it in it's before it's ready to be used. When you do something at home, that's not part of preparing the produce, it's part of eating the produce. And then you have to deal with borer potentially, but there's no dash. So says according to this, the almonds, when was the last time you saw almonds in the hard wooden shell? When was the last time you broke an almond? Anyone? You see what the problem is? Right? It's not normally done. Nowadays, it's not normally done. And it's done in the factory, in the field, so to speak, as part of the processing of the food, and hence that is melechet dash. And that would apply, perhaps, depending on the culture, that would apply to walnuts, to pistachios, to peanuts, right? If it becomes something that people, there are those who want to argue that no, nowadays we're just so lazy, so they're trying to help us eat it, right? And the next thing you'll have like robots putting it in your mouth, like, But but it's not, doesn't make a difference really is not a part. But others argue. Chacham Obadia tries in Chelek Dalet of Chazor Obadia, he tries to argue that no, still is considered part of the eating, but the many who are machmir, right? Shevet HaLevi is machmir. Rav Mosner alav shalom. Again, according to Maharshag, it should come out to be asur. The Menuchat Avar, Rabbi Moshe Levi, one of the contemporary major Svarim and Hilchot Shabbat. He also comes out that the Chorah should be asur to do any of those because it's not even borer, that's dash. And dash doesn't have all the leniencies that we mentioned before, so therefore, something to be mindful of, right? Let's call this the chumrah of the day, okay? But now we jump the gun to the end of the seif in the Ramah because it was just too good not to say it. Now let's go actually through the Maran, the words of the Mechaber of Shulchan Aruch, and discuss them one at a time. So says the Mishnah Berurah, En molelin, melilahu shemolela shibolim k'dei lefarek hadagan mitochan. When you rub them and separating thereby the food from the casing outside, the shell, the husk, whatever it is outside. Asur mipeneh shenir'eh kedash. And the isur over here it's isur darabanan because it looks like dash, right? Now you understand why the Ben Ish Chai said that this is darabanan, and therefore you don't need a full shinui, right? A little small change would suffice. Beshinui me'at begemara ita. Now listen to the words of especially in light of what we mentioned in the name of Rav Pe'alim and the argument we brought up with it from the mashma'ut of the maskana of the Gemara and the poskim. Begemara ita umolel berashe etzbotav ezu shinui she'eno molel beyado. That Rashi Etzbotav, when you do it with your fingertips, is considered a shinui. It's considered a change. That you're not actually doing it with the palm of your hand or using your palm and your fingertips. That would be the normal way of doing it. But when you do it with your thumb, fingertips of your thumb and your other fingers, that is considered a shinui. A shinui, a small shinui at least. Umadeka mar me'at, and what it says shinui me'at doesn't mean a little change, but it means shelo yimlol bahem rak me'at. You could only do a little milul, a little melila, right? A small amount that you could do, not a lot. Vechen muchach b'gemara sham, in the name of Hilchot Shabbat, that's the maskana of the Gemara over there. Okay. The same thing would be with legumes, with kitniot, when you have beans, is the same thing, right? It's the same thing that you can't do, that you could only do a little bit, not a lot, right? And that also should be done through a little change. Says the Mishnah Berurah, I don't understand. Everybody does this. So how does that work exactly? Everybody takes the beans out of the, imagine the green beans that they come with their case. So,
In pods.
Yeah, in the pods. Same thing. Again, they have pods. The sesame seeds. There's pods, a long pod with rows of sesame seeds inside of it. What?
Soybeans. Yeah, same thing.
Soybeans, the same story. Yeah. So all those. Sarich lomar. So this is a hidush. Kevan she'odan lachin, because they are fresh, and even the pod itself is edible at that point, right? Like people who have this like sweet baby, what do you call them? The beans, the sugar, the green beans, the small ones that you actually chew on them, snappies, right? Yes. The snappies that you have, and you eat them as is. Even though that if you would wait for them to grow fully, that would harden and it would become not as tasty and it would not be necessarily edible. It will harden when they fully ripen. Same as with the pod for sesames also. In the beginning is green, and when it dries, when it's fully ripened and it dries, it's like dark brown. It becomes hardened, almost like a as a thin wooden thing becomes, like almost. So that's of course different. So it says the Mishnah Berurah, when they're fresh and you can actually chew and eat the sharbit, the pod itself as well, then it's mutar because it's no longer dash. You're doing borer of ochel mitoch ochel. Both of them are ochel. You can eat even the other part. It's not solid, and therefore lo heve mefarek rak kemafrit ochel meochel aval yeveshin. But if it's already dried, then you have a serious problem over here. Or things that the casing, the pot, the sharbit is not ra'ui la'achila. כגון פולין שלנו, וכן שומשמין מקליפתן אסור. As he says, שומשמין is not ראוי לאכילה, I guess at least at the time that they harvest them, it's not ראוי לאכילה, and therefore אסור לכול עלמא בלי שינוי would be אסור without שינוי according to everybody. You have to make a שינוי in that case. Okay, even if you want to, then that's even if you want to eat it immediately, because it's not a derech achila over here. You're talking about isur of mefarek, isur of dash, which does not have all the leniencies that we mentioned before,
so
right?
Tamarind, for instance, like it's got a hard exterior. The way of eating it is to break the exterior, which is inedible, and then get to the tamarind. It's not the way of eating. I mean, sometimes they do package it without the exterior. So what do you do in those situations? I mean,
I'm not exactly sure how it's handled. You have to show me what it is afterwards, and we could discuss it. Now, there's another heter that Chaim brings, that if you have something that's cooked, right? Let's say you cook the beans with the outer, outer sharbit. The whole thing was cooked. So Harav says derech dash is not by mebushal, so therefore is mutar, right? It's not derech to do it in that way, and therefore it will be mutar. This isn't Chazon Badia Shabbat Chelik Dalit, and he's not the first one to say this. There are others who say that when you have things that are not considered the norm, and it's not derech disha, it's not the way of separation in a commercial way, it would be mutar. Fine. So it says, by the way, this Mishnah Berurah that says even derech achila would be asur, it's not necessarily muskam, because, for instance, the Pri Megadim, he has a sefer Rosh Yosef on Shas, and there in Masechet Betzah, Daf Yud Bet Amud Bet, he says that things that are derech achila, things that you're going to use right away, immediately, miyad, you're going to be eating, it's mutar even in this case. But again, this is something that Chacham Ovadia also brings, and he uses it as a snif la'akel, and he mentions that from many Rishonim you see like that. So therefore, this Mishnah Berurah, of course, is the psak of the Mishnah Berurah, but there are other considerations of leniency there available based on the Pri Megadim and other Rishonim, even that even by melechet dash, if it's the way you're eating it, at least would knock it down to a lesser isur, or maybe even mutar. Fine. So says the Mishnah Berurah. V'yesh machmirim. He goes on the Ramah now that there are those who are stringent, and therefore it would be asur to take away a green shell on the outside of the nuts. Says the Mishnah Berurah, the svira lehu de davka lerakech hashibolim mutar ali de shinui, aval lefarek hadagan mitoch hashibolim, to actually take the produce out of the casing, out of the husk, that would be asur. Even if you're doing it through shinui, it would be asur. Even though that you want to consume it, you want to eat it immediately afterwards, because it's considered dash. It's considered something that is michsi kedash. It's a isur de rabbanan, and therefore it's asur. But if it's already separated and you have a mixture, then when it was separated from its husk, the produce now was separated from the shell, and now they're sitting in a mixture together. In that case, mutar lekalevo, you could peel it off completely to take the food out and consume it. That would be fine. That's not considered dash, right? So that's the Mishnah Berurah, and says in Chav Gimel, we have one more over here. V'lachen asur, that is asur to peel off the green peel of the casing outside of the nuts. Hainu afilu al yedei shinui. You can't even do it through shinui. The beli shinui lekula al masur. Of course, without shinui, will be asur according to everyone. Now, there is a Shara Tziyun over here in Ot Tetvav, which is important. When you're doing mefarek, when you are doing isur of dash, that does not make a difference if it's immediate or is it for later use. Unlike borer, that if you're doing borer ochel mitoch pesolet, it makes a difference if it's for now versus for later on. When you're doing isur of dash, it does not make a difference if it's for immediate use or for later on. Says the Sharatz, says the Chafetz Chaim in Sharatz Yun, ve'en da'ato le'echol miyad, and if your mindset is not to eat it right away, afilu al yidei shinui asur. Even doing it kilachad yad, backhandedly, will be asur. So you need to do it backhandedly. Shinui is needed to make it mutar because of the isur of mefarek, and you have to also do it right away to take care of borer. So you have to, it's juggling two isurim at the same time. One is that it looks like a mefarek, so you have to do it b'shinui to get rid of that. And one is that it's not any better than regular borer, so you have to do ochel mitoch psolet, and it has to be immediate. Now, ochel mitoch psolet is a little tricky because, let's say, if you break a knot and now the pieces of the wooden shell is there together with the nuts, and you want to take them out, that would, according to many, be like peeling an orange. If need to be done like that. So that's a little tricky, but nevertheless, you have the restrictions of borer and you have the restriction of mefarek, which has to be done b'shinui. Right? So if you don't do it b'shinui, is asur, even if you want to do it for immediate use, and even if you did it b'shinui, you still need it to be immediate because of isur borer. Right?
Can I ask a question, Rabbi?
Not yet. Just give me a few seconds. V'dash umolel en bo mishum borer she'adayin yesh lo psolet. Now he says a bombshell over here, right? That once you have, it seems to say that once you have not separated all of the pieces of psolet, like I read it again, en bo mishum borer she'adayin yesh lo psolet ma she'en ken bazeh. Right? When you have still psolet mixed with it, is not chiyuv of borer. Now, this opens up, of course, a can of worms, because what if I have a mixture of bad and good, and I took one bad thing off, but still plenty there. I didn't fix, so to speak, the mixture. There's still a lot of psolet mixed over there. So the Pri Megadim and even the Mishnah Berurah himself later on in Biur Halacha in Siman Shin Mem, towards the beginning, they want to say from a Yerushalmi that that's not a chiyuv of borer. It may be D'Rabbanan, but not really a chiyuv d'oraita, because you still have pesolet there. But Chacham Obadia brings really from the Achronim who proved this from Masechet Shabbat, from Bavli, right? In Yabia Omer, Harav Obadia has a tshuva that he very strongly disagrees with this. He says, you see from Masechet Shabbat of Bavli, forget about Yerushalmi, how you learn it, even if you have a Yerushalmi, but you have a Bavli that seems not like that, you'll go, of course, with the Bavli. And therefore, Says Aradia, even if you take a little bit of pesolet from the mixture, that's exactly melechet borer, and even for that you would be on a hook based on the Gemara in Masechet Shabbat Daf Ayin Gimel Amud Bet. This is also the view of the Igletal, the Avnei Nezer, the Sochichov Rav, as they say, right? Rabbi Avraham Yisochichov, the great Avnei Nezer, in his Sefer on Hilchot Shabbat Igletal, he also brings the same proof from Masechet Shabbat, and therefore he maintains that this would be a Sudoraita. So even though we have this, halachically speaking, it would be a problem nevertheless. So let's do the last piece of the Mishnah Berurah over here in Seif Vav as well. Klipatan HaYerukam in Ot Chaf Dalet. Deze dami kemitoch hashibolin. This already, says the Mishnah Berurah, is equivalent of being mefarek, the food, separation of the food from its, the produce from its husk, that it's done as an early stage, and therefore the early stage is considered like dash, and therefore it would be asur. Aval kule alma, says the Mishnah Berurah, over 100 years ago, aval kule alma mutar leshabel hakripa kasha, is mutar to break the wooden shell. According to everyone, only the green one is a problem. The wooden one, according to everyone, is mutar, says the Mishnah Berurah. Right? Now, the Menuchat Ava, right, the Shevet HaLevi, Wozner, perhaps the Maharshag, even though that he was a Talmud of the Maharam Shik, they would say that nowadays, that's not true. Yes, 100 years ago, people, 85 years ago when I was growing up, when you went to a store to buy nuts, which they came in like this big brown sack bags, right? Anyone remembers that, right? You actually had, rarely you found the walnuts in, completely shelled off, because first of all, it would lose its taste. Still, like when you eat something that's not fresh, you could tell the change of taste. And secondly, it would get bugs. We got infested because everything was open. The fridge and plastic was before. You had Ziploc bags and plastic bags, the sealed bags. No such a thing. Everything was open. You would go there with this metal big spoon that they had. You would take in and So I see the smiles on the older chevra that they have seen this actually, but that's how it was. Munchies. They said that was the munchies. Yeah, the munchies would be like bags and bags and bags of the sacks on the floor, and you had your pistachios and you had your almonds and you had and walnuts came in the brown shell. Right? The wooden shell, you came home and you had to break it and then peel it out. It was a whole avodah to do that, right? And half of them were empty, right? But that's how it was. So don't be surprised at what the Mishnah Berurah's time, 100 years ago, if the norm was that's what you did at home because of preservation of the quality of the nut and so on and so forth. So that would be part of eating. But says the Marshag, if that changes and now it's part of the production and nobody does it at home, then it will become part of the process of the field process, which will be part of dash. Because really, in essence, there's no difference between the green shell and the wood case. It is the same thing. It all depends on how you eat the thing. Back in the day, they would eat it with, hammer was a part of eating nuts, right? And that's what they would have to do. Nowadays, you just buy them completely peeled, nice, beautiful. You see what you're buying, and it's all preserved because they're in sealed, tight, airtight bags, and so on and so forth. So the quality is preserved, and it's much easier. So therefore, that's the production.
Would you put coconut in that category, for instance? coconuts are very difficult.
Again, it really depends. It really depends where you live also.
Right.
Like, in many parts of the world, there's no coconuts to be had. So coconuts grow on the tree as shreds of white stuff that you buy in store, right? So that's the only way that you see coconuts, right? Coconut shreds, white.
Flakes.
And no one would know, no, not even flakes, but yeah, maybe like flakes. But those places that they have them in plenty, and the way coconuts come is the actual coconut with a straw inside for you to drink the fresh water, and then you do whatever you want with the inside. Then that's of course different, right? It would be somewhat dependent on how it's done in that time and generation,
And
according to the Maharshal.
You could use a hammer and like a knife to break it, like if it was the way to break it.
Yeah, of course. In Siman Shin Chet and Shin Yud, Maran discusses in Hilchot Muktzeh that even though that the hammer is considered regularly a muktzeh because it's kli shebachto leisur. Usually, you use hammer for hammering nails and pulling out nails, and aside from mother-in-laws, that's a different mother-in-laws and son-in-laws. Don't misunderstand that. But aside from that, it's not. But says Maran, if you're using it in order to crack open a shell, it's mutar, because you're using a kli shebachto leisur for sorech of heter. So kli shebachto leisur lesorech gufo is mutar, and this is sorech gufo. That you want to take it and break open a knot, that would be mutar.
So could you do that with a coconut even ahead of time, or only right before you want to eat it?
Again, the coconut has the green shell also outside. For those who don't know, coconut also comes without their shell, right? Which is very hard to. You have to have like a special knife, and you have to know how to peel it off. It's not easy to take that off.
But if you just want the juice, just to stick a straw in or something.
Yeah, so you have to still do that. You have to still take the peel off, then that would be considered a problem, according to probably everyone. The question would be, now that you have the hard shell, what to do with that? And that perhaps would be if you want to just poke a hole inside and have the juice with a straw, that would for sure be fine.
You think that has to be the altar also? When
Yeah, can you do that like ahead of time?
What does that mean?
Just a hard shell. Like if you want to, I don't know, prepare drinks to the shirshi, you want to hammer holes in a bunch of coconuts and stick straws in them. Ahead of time. Like you want to do it 3 hours ahead of time. Is that okay?
What are you doing exactly?
That's not boring.
That's not even broiler.
That's not boring.
What are you doing?
That's not boring.
He's asking if kli shebachto leisur,
Or if you were to shave off the coconut.
Because it didn't alter by.
Not necessarily. No. So let's just finish this. We have 2 minutes to finish this, Rabotai. We have 1 minute to finish this. ולקלוף כמה קליפת הקש על האגוז גופה אוכל כמה בסימן שנחף א' לוזים ובוטנים שנשתברו ועדיין הם בקליפתן משמע דברים בסימן זה שיש להיזהר לברור האוכל מתוך הקליפות. Again, we mentioned that that nowadays the Menucha Da'avash with Levi disagree with the Hanacha of this Mishnah Berurah based on what's done in our generation. ואפילו שתתו לאכול מיד ומשום בורר אבל לקמן בסימן תק"י he brings the Magen Avraham in the name of the Maharshal in Hilchot Shlomo, דבר זה שקולף הקליפה מהן בכלל תיקונה דאוכלה הוא ולא שייך ברירה בזה. If you're peeling off something to eat at the same time will be mutar according to the Maharshal. ואף שהקשה עליו מגן אברהם כבר ישבו בספר רבה. It becomes a little bit complicated here, but basically one of the things that we said earlier on in this shiur, that if you have broken the shells and now there's a mixture and you want to take them out, if that's considered peeling something that you want to eat, like peeling anything else, if that's the derech, the norm to do it, that would be mutar and it will not be included in the isur of borer, which is what he discusses over here. But that becomes a little bit complicated because again, part of this is not really done nowadays. So to mention that as a peeling would be, in other words, according to the Maharshal, according to the Shevet HaLevi, according to Menucha Da'ava, this whole thing is less relevant because the very essence of doing that will be problematic according to the guidelines of Hilchot Mefarek and Dash, and hence it will be less relevant. But again, we did learn something very essential in Sif Vav. The core of it is the differentiation between Dash and Borer, and the applications of that halakha l'maaseh nowadays, which again, according to the Rabbeinu Hananel, things that are stuck versus things that are just mixed is the differentiation. And a more practical differentiation would be what the Maharshag writes, that if you have something that is done usually as the process of the company, process of the field, not as process of eating, that would be dash, and hence would not have the leniencies of borer, versus something that you do in order to eat the thing, which would be like, hard shells of pistachios would be part of that. Like, people still break open that to eat it as a normal part of how pistachios are served, and therefore that would be mutar. You're just then dealing with potential Hilchot Borer questions that we have discussed already in the previous Seifim, and